probably the best one that I've learned, I guess just in life, is you trust but verify.
Yeah.
So trust what they're saying, but, every so often, just have a look. Just have a look at the bank statements, just have a look at this, just have a look at that.
Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics such as investing, cash flow, budgeting, saving, passive income, debt management, and much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I'm Billy and I'm joined by my co-host,
Andrew. Bills, here we are back again, and you are back from Japan and back on the podcast.
I am Andrew and trying to deal with the cold weather that is Melbourne, but we won't talk about that. But I must say, Japan, if you're looking at going somewhere, I understand now why everybody bangs on about Japan. Such a beautiful place, so much to see, so much to do. I think this is going to turn into a travel podcast the way that we're going. But look, my endorsement, go there. It's great. You'll love it. Fantastic.
And don't ask for a refund if you don't enjoy it.
Andrew, what are we talking to everybody about today?
Yeah, so today a bit of an interesting topic, a bit of a change to some of the other podcasts, but we're going to look at financial red flags. So what are some of the things that you can look out for, whether that's in business, whether that's in just life, or whether that's in love? What are some of the financial red flags that you should look out for and make sure that you're aware of so you can avoid any potential issues?
So I've got a really big smile on my face. So those people that are watching along can obviously see the smile. Hopefully you can hear it in my voice as well too. This has got nothing to do with the Coldplay scandal, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the financial red flags, one of the topics is if your partner books a Coldplay ticket, financial red flag.
Oh, geez. That should be another podcast within itself. Okay, Andrew, where do we start?
We had to drop that in.
We did have to drop that in. And it's too comical. And I understand why the memes are going around and stuff, but it's too comical not to talk about. I mean, look, maybe that's a topic within itself in terms of the cost associated with financial separation from a financial aspect. So that could be something. Anyway, getting off topic. Yeah. Andrew, where do we start? Financial red flags in business and in love and in life. Where do we start? What do we think about?
Yeah, I mean, look, and this can happen really when you're talking about, business partners, when you're talking about, partners in spouses, but hidden or controlling behavior around money. So, I mean, that's a fairly obvious one, but when someone is, obviously, secretive around where money's come from, where money is, what's happening, obviously big red flag around that. And that, also comes with business partners. We've had meetings where we sit down in front of business partners and one person has absolutely no idea, but still wants to know about, what's happening in a business, and another business partner is quite secretive and cagey about it. That's usually a bit of a red flag there.
Yeah. One of the things that I tend to find, hidden bank accounts is kind of one that's a huge one for me, and people tend to stumble across it by accident. Maybe a statement gets sent from a banking institution back to home or what have you, and you weren't certain that you had something there. That's usually the catalyst. But yeah, look, all of those sorts of things. It could even be something like restricting the amount of money that your partner's spending, and being really controlling with what that looks like as well too. Generally speaking, and this is a huge generalization, but it's built off, I guess, the experience that we see with people when we're talking to them, is there's usually one member of a couple or a partnership that takes the leading position with financials. So they're the ones that are, they're charged with the responsibility of looking after that, but they're also, the expectation is that they're transparent and open. And when it comes to decision making, they're making those decisions jointly as opposed to just doing it themselves. And I've got a really good way to explain it. I guess how it works in our household and what that looks like to try and make it fair and equitable, which I'll share with everybody shortly. But the other thing is making decisions by themselves and not putting that to the group, whether it's two members of the household. So in our household, what does it look like? So I'm in control of the finances, so that's my responsibility. what we tend to do with us is we've got essentially like a running spreadsheet that we update each month on all of our details, so asset position, liability position, that Samantha has access to with that. And each and every time we spend over a certain threshold, we've each got the ability to be able to do it. But when it's over a certain amount, then we'll come together and make that decision jointly as well too. And I think that's really important from that perspective. And then any investment decisions that I make for us, I vet them and run them past her first to make sure she understands them and she's comfortable with doing that as well too. So the idea behind it is, yes, that's my responsibility, but really pushing that transparency piece to say, hey, this is what we're doing and this is our position.
Yeah, exactly. And look, there are instances where, you do meet a couple that one person just doesn't have a willingness to even want to know about it. They trust the other person wholly and they say, look, you take care of it. I don't want to know unless I absolutely have to. And so that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is where, someone wants to know about their finances, someone wants to be involved, but the other partner is, being secretive around what's happening, what's transpiring, where things are at, and where things are. I think that's, clearly a very big red flag there.
Yep. From a financial red flag, more so from an opportunity perspective, but this one rings true and it always seems to catch people out. But if you see something or get sold something or pressured into something that seems unrealistic and potentially around the returns, the old adage, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. High pressure pitches, things like that. That's a huge red flag and people should proceed with caution. And actually, while we're on that, or on this line of thinking, you think about the amount of scams that are going on.
Yeah.
They're increasing it looks like it's each and every week, but people are getting scammed at a greater and a greater and a greater extent. So this is a real issue. Being mindful of unrealistic promises is a huge red flag in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. This can happen in a variety of senses. So there's the obvious one, which is, someone's recommending a particular investment or saying that there's quick and easy money to be made on something. But there's also other instances where it's not necessarily coming out of malice sometimes. So there are instances where someone's gone into business with another person and, this business idea is so fantastic. We're going to make so much money and all of this stuff. And it's just been way too optimistic and being overly optimistic around, what is realistic and what can actually happen, and whether this is something that you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And we've seen it, sometimes even when it comes to, parents with kids and parent lending money to a child to set up a business because it's a fantastic idea and, this is going to make us millionaires, and they're not doing it because they're trying to support a child, but rather because there's a profit motive that's there. Anything that sometimes that seems like it's too good to be true usually is.
Yeah, no, well said. Andrew, financial gaslighting or manipulation. So this turns back into, I guess, the relationship aspect of it, whether it's a personal or a business relationship. What are some of the things that we think about there? Because I guess in my experience or in our experience, we're seeing, younger clients when they're getting together with their life partner essentially. And one of the big decisions that we see is merging of their finances.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a great opportunity because, it creates one unit as opposed to, and two people working together as one as opposed to sort of working individually, but it also opens up the door to some risks as well. So what do we think about, or what do we see from a gaslighting and a manipulation perspective?
I mean, look, some of the really common ones is when someone, downplays concerns. So yes, it's okay to, explain things and obviously make sure that that you're doing the right thing, but downplaying concerns, denying transactions, blaming somebody else. So there's an issue with finances and, really common one is, but you're the one that's always overspending, really trying to confuse and manipulate the situation, which does lead on to the next point as well that we did want to talk about. So there's obviously that, from a gaslighting and a manipulation side of things, but when you do see, people trying to confuse, there's usually a lack of documentation. So the documentation, the paper trails, it doesn't lie. And sometimes getting a professional involved and getting, someone like an accountant or a financial advisor to look through documentation and just understand that not everyone's necessarily financially literate. And so it can sometimes be hard to, distill the noise from someone that's trying to manipulate from, what does the paper trail actually show and say. So sometimes getting a, professional involved to unpack it and look at it, in an unbiased way. And sometimes it's, look, everything's above board and it's all good. Maybe there was some confusion and, lack of understanding. And sometimes there's, manipulation that's ultimately, going on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good one as well too. And that becomes an even bigger challenge. If you think about the time frame or the ease of how money is transferred these days, you just grab your phone, press a couple of buttons and away you go. And then you think about the statement that usually arrives, depending on the frequency of what that looks like. You could be talking a month later, even in some instances further. And then depending on the level of transactions, it can be quite hard to detect that because it's caught up with so many other transactions as well too. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. But yeah, the paperwork or the money trail that never lies. And I guess that's the other adage as well too, is that, you follow the money, right? So that's a good one. Continual borrowing without any repayment. So this would be, Andrew, can I borrow $100 and, we forget about it and stuff like that. Another way to manipulate and control as well too. Yeah.
Happens with, partners, happens with friends, happens with family members. See it happening with, parents. And so another big one with all of this, and maybe is a discussion piece, as a financial red flag when you're looking out for someone else rather than just for yourself, is parents. So you look at, elder abuse, you look at, parents lending money to children, and there's just, hey, I need, $5,000, hey, I need $1,000, and that adds up over time. So we've seen instances where, there's been a sibling that's caught wind and seen things. And I think it's really important to, one, make sure that if you are lending money, we're always big proponents. And, you need to use a little bit of common sense as well, but document it. Like create a paper trail. And there's, a lot of benefits around it, not necessarily just in, financial red flags and abuse, but when you talk about relationship breakdown, parents lending money to kids, having a agreement in place that you've said that, hey, this was not a gift, but rather was borrowings, can also protect, that money from being taken in the, course of a relationship breakdown. So making sure that you're, creating a paper trail when you are lending money out, and making sure that there is an agreement that, hey, this is going to come back, is really important.
Yeah. And look, on that elder abuse one too, Andrew, that's a ever increasing problem that we're seeing time and time again, for a couple of reasons. I guess generally when you look at a timescale of wealth creation, usually over time people end up, building up their wealth. A parent or somebody who's elderly becomes a little bit less connected to this just because of the complexity and the nature, and we all tend to get older. But then you think about the financial pressure associated with what life is like. So you might have somebody that's seeing, or they're in a position where life is difficult and challenging, and then all of a sudden they see an opportunity that, hey, mum's got money and no one's going to know and this and that. Unfortunately, it does happen. It's really hard to detect as well too, because it's usually not reported and it's behind closed doors. But that's probably a really, really huge one. And I guess from that perspective, looking for the red flag, just on that note, to bring some awareness to it, is if you see somebody who is, a parent and a child, and all of a sudden the child's lifestyle has increased in terms of things like experiences and spending and consuming, and that's kind of unexplained in terms of, okay, there hasn't been any windfall or income increases or what have you. And then you see from an elder perspective that maybe they're always struggling to pay the bills, or they're always complaining about money, or things are a little bit too tight.
Or even dementia and things like that can be an opportunity for people. So Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of a somber topic. It's different to our normal upbeat podcast, but look, I think it's really important stuff for people to know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's important to take a balanced view. It's part and parcel of some of the stuff that we see, and especially if that's something that you're thinking or seeing, being able to identify those red flags is definitely going to help. Over leveraging and living beyond your means is a huge one. So I always tend to think about this, and one of my friends, and it was his dad that actually said it, but the two most important decisions in your life, and I'm sure it came from someone else, but who you marry and what do you do for a living, right? So if you think about who you marry, if you end up with a life partner or even yourself, but if you're living beyond your means, I think that's a trait that people have. And if you decide that person is going to be your life partner, that's going to be something that's going to impact and affect you as well too. Because like I said, going back to that thing, who you end up with as your life partner really makes a difference to your lifestyle and your future prospects as well too. And if you've got somebody who is living beyond their means, there's poor financial management, there's instability there, and it's always going to be the case. And it's just such a red flag that, you might be in love with that person, but the pain that can cause, the financial pain, the financial heartache, and the pain that it can cause within the relationship can't be downplayed. Huge red flag.
Yeah, and that's why I
almost feel like a relationship counsellor here, Andrew.
I'm going to really feel like a relationship counsellor, because what I was going to say is I think that should be an important discussion topic when you're talking about, dating and in the early stages of dating someone.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, sitting down and asking for their financial position and, any of that stuff, because
give me your P&L, maybe balance sheet.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it takes a bit of the romance out of it. But a discussion topic really should be, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to achieve? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do financially? Like, those are important decisions. And one of the biggest reasons for separation is financial hardship. When people experience financial hardship, it takes a huge toll on the relationship. And if there's someone that's overspending, over leveraging, living beyond their means, and another person doesn't want to live in that way, then it's a cause for friction and it's a cause for issues. And I think within this one, there's, and funnily enough, there's been a few instances where we've seen it with people in our sort of immediate circle, where someone has been essentially lying all along, whereby they have had expensive watches and bags and cars and lived a lavish lifestyle, lied about what their income is, lied about their financial position, and bubbling under the surface was a huge amount of consumer debt that funded all of this. And a partner had absolutely no idea about it and didn't know that, jointly they were in this absolutely horrendous financial position. And in fact was, they were out looking for properties that they were never going to purchase because they could never afford. But it was all just a complete fabrication in order to, showcase this lavish lifestyle, which, they couldn't afford. And so, when you talk about over leveraging, when you talk about living within your means, there's also the deceit aspect of it. And making sure that even if you are the person that's not, necessarily, and, both of our partners are exactly like that, but even if you're the person who's not necessarily, making the larger decisions around finances and, relying on the other person in the relationship, being aware of where are we at, is a big thing. And for all of the risks that come with having joint bank accounts and, joint accounts and joining finances, that is one of the benefits, is that when things are joined, it does make it a lot more difficult for someone to pull the wool over your eyes, because you can see the money coming in, you can see where things are going, and it creates a bit more of, transparency. But yeah, that's certainly a massive one.
I'm keen to find out what the
and we'll talk about that
catalyst was that blew over the deck of cards or the house of cards. Just on that point, like, interestingly enough, thinking about manipulation and controlling behavior, I don't know if we if we touched on this enough, but it could be, so talking about the right person, but we've used the example where one person is really poor at money management, but then you might have somebody on the other extreme that's extremely, I don't know, restrictive with their money.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're partners and it's like, Andrew, you know, damn it, you've spent $5 on that cup of coffee today and I berate you every time you do something like that and I'm really controlling and restrictive with the money. That could be, well, that's just as detrimental as somebody who's got poor money management skills and basically flexes and blows everything that they're earning anyway. So I don't know if we touched on that well enough, but it comes back full circle that one of the big reasons outside of going to a Coldplay concert for relationships to break down is financial stress. And if you're doing stupid stuff, play stupid game, get stupid prize or win stupid prizes, financial stress is definitely one of those up there along with Coldplay.
It's just so hilarious because it's now become so synonymous with, you know, breakups and all of that stuff when their music is quite literally the opposite. It's all about love and harmony. And
do you want to hear a joke just quickly? Right. So
always.
So the joke is this. So Coldplay is Coldplay is such a good band. They created 4 singles in one night. You heard that one before?
I did.
Andrew, let's get this back on track. What are some practical things that we can do in order to protect ourselves and give practical examples or tips to our listeners now and our viewers to try and basically protect themselves from situations like this?
Yeah, I think, look, transparency in relationships is a massive one. Making sure that you're on the same page from the very beginning and having those conversations around, hey, where do we want to be financially? What do we want to do? What type of lifestyle do we want to live? Is it, hey, you know, we want to work really hard, build up our assets and, you know, slow down? I mean, when people are not on the same page, that's usually when deceit comes into it. And that's the same when it comes to business partners as well. What type of business do we want to run? What type of operation do we want to do? Is it, you know, we're trying to build this up so that we can sell it and have a massive exit? Are we trying to, you know, take out as much money as we can and receive profit distributions? But I think the first thing before you start talking about making sure that there's legal agreements and all of that stuff with everything is making sure that who's going to impact you financially is on the same page as you financially. Is really important.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, it all starts with a conversation and just getting that out in the open and having that conversation about what it is and really open and transparent. Trust your gut is another one. But probably the best one that I've learned, I guess just in life, is you trust but verify.
Yeah.
So trust what they're saying, but, you know, every so often, just have a look. Just have a look at the bank statements, just have a look at this, just have a look at that, and that will tell you. And you want to do that before you get into, you know, in too deep with certain things. But if you make that part and parcel of how you operate, like what I was saying with us, each and every month we're updating that spreadsheet, Samantha's got access to it and so on and so forth. I think if you make that part of your process and your routine, it's going to go a long way. But yeah, trusting your gut's probably the hairs on the back of your neck's probably the first one. But make sure you end up with a good person. That's probably it.
And I think as well, working with good professionals can't be understated. And what I mean by that is whether that's a financial advisor that's looking after your personal finances, knows the amount of money that's coming in, and so will know if there's money that's going out that's unexplained. But, you know, when you're in business, you're talking about your accountant, you're talking about your other trusted advisors that are going to see, you know, business transactions and if money's been siphoned off elsewhere. Having professionals around you that are unbiased, so not necessarily, you know, your new business partner's, you know, brother that's working as an accountant, but having some unbiased professionals around you can make the world of difference. And yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing. Trust, but verify and make sure.
Andrew, I reckon we did that one justice.
Absolutely.
And a bit of humour in there with Coldplay as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Always.
To our listeners and our viewers, hope you got a whole heap of value out of that. If there was anything in there that you wanted to have a chat about or that resonated with you and you wanted to reach out, please feel free. Details are in the show notes. Andrew, thank you for today.
Thanks, Bills. Look good coming back and being back on the podcast. I feel like I skipped a few beats, not you.
All good. Had a refreshing break.
Exactly. Thanks very much, and look forward to catching you on the next one.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we talked about or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au.
The information in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal objectives, financial situation, or needs. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice and should not be relied upon as such. You should consider whether the information is appropriate to your circumstances and seek professional advice before acting on any of the information provided. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance. This information is provided by Billy Amaritis and Andrew Nicolaou of 360 Financial Strategists Proprietary Limited, authorised representatives and credit representatives of Acumen Financial Planning Proprietary Limited.